My name is Maria, and humor has always been a cornerstone of my relationship with my husband, Ryan. We've been married for 4 years, and in that time, we've turned countless small annoyances into jokes. If he left his socks in the living room or forgot to load the dishwasher, I'd roll my eyes and laugh. It was our way of keeping things light, of not letting the little things get to us. But somewhere along the way, I started sharing our humor with the world, or at least with my online world. My social media accounts had grown over the years, and my followers seemed to love the glimpses I gave them into our life. They adored the stories about Ryan's quirks and my playful exasperation. I told myself it was harmless. After all, Ryan laughed along with me at home. Why wouldn't he laugh along with me online? Last week, though, I crossed a line I didn't even realize was there. It started innocently enough. One morning, as Ryan shuffled into the kitchen wearing his old, stretched-out flannel pajama pants, I couldn't help but laugh. Those pants were infamous in our house, a relic from college that he refused to part with, no matter how faded or threadbare they became. "You know," I teased, holding up my phone. "The world needs to see these iconic pajamas. They're practically a historical artifact." Ryan smirked but shook his head. "Do what you want," he said, pouring himself a cup of coffee. So I did. I recorded a quick video of him walking around in the pants and added a caption. POV. Your husband refuses to let go of his beloved pajama pants, and you're considering donating them while he sleeps. I thought it was funny. My followers thought so too. Within hours, the video had gone viral. The comments poured in, and while some people found it amusing, others didn't hold back. Why does he look like a middle-aged man stuck in 2004? Does he even care about his appearance? Yikes. Girl, you could do so much better. The laughter I'd felt when I posted the video turned into unease as I scrolled through the increasingly brutal comments. Still, I told myself it wasn't a big deal. It was just the internet, and people always exaggerated online. Ryan wouldn't even notice, I thought. But I was wrong. That evening, as we sat down for dinner, Ryan was quieter than usual. I noticed him scrolling on his phone, his expression hard to read. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He looked up, his face unreadable. "Saw your video," he said flatly. "Oh yeah?" I said, forcing a laugh. "It's funny, right?" He didn't laugh. "Maria, have you read the comments?" I froze. "Some of them," I admitted. "But people are just joking. They don't mean anything by it." Ryan set his phone down, his jaw tightening. "It doesn't feel like a joke to me. Do you know how humiliating it is to see strangers ripping me apart? To see them saying things like you could do better?" His voice cracked on the last words, and my heart sank. "Ryan, I didn't mean for it to upset you," I said quickly. "It was just a joke. You always laugh about the pajama pants." "Yeah, at home," he interrupted, his voice rising. "With you. Not with thousands of strangers online who think it's okay to insult me because you put me out there for them to judge." I opened my mouth to argue, but the look on his face stopped me. This wasn't the playful, good-natured Ryan I was used to. He looked hurt, betrayed. "I need some air," he said abruptly, standing up and grabbing his keys. "Ryan, wait," I started, but he was already out the door. As I sat there alone at the table staring at the untouched plates of food, I realized I had made a terrible mistake. What I had thought was harmless fun had crossed a line, and now I wasn't sure if I could fix it. The silence after Ryan left that night was deafening. I sat at the dinner table for what felt like hours, replaying our conversation in my mind. My stomach churned as I thought about the hurt in his voice, the way his shoulders tensed as he walked out the door. I told myself he'd come back once he cooled off. But when I woke up the next morning, his side of the bed was still untouched. Panic started to creep in as I checked my phone, hoping for a text. But there was nothing. I spent the day trying to distract myself with work, but I couldn't focus. My thoughts kept drifting to him, where he was, what he was feeling, and whether I had completely ruined everything. By the afternoon, I finally caved and texted him. "Ryan, I'm so sorry. Please come home so we can talk. I didn't realize how much the post hurt you." Hours passed with no response. The longer I waited, the more the weight of what I'd done began to sink in. I opened the app where I had posted the video, scrolling through the comments again. This time, I didn't laugh. Some of the comments were just as brutal as before, but now they felt like knives twisting in my gut. People were speculating about our relationship, calling him names, and even questioning why I'd married him in the first place. One comment in particular made me pause. If my wife did this to me, I'd be gone. Public humiliation isn't love. I closed the app, my hands shaking. Was that how Ryan saw it? As public humiliation? That evening, I called his best friend, Mark, hoping he might have some insight. "Have you heard from Ryan?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah, he's here," Mark said, his tone cautious. "He stayed over last night." Relief washed over me, but it was quickly replaced by guilt. Ryan wasn't just angry. He needed space. Space I had forced him to find outside of our home. "Is he okay?" I asked softly. "He's upset, Maria," Mark said bluntly. "He feels like you don't respect him. Like you care more about entertaining strangers online than about how your actions affect him." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. "That's not true," I said quickly. But even as I said it, I realized how hollow it sounded. "I'm just telling you what he said," Mark replied. "Look, Maria, I know you didn't mean to hurt him, but you need to think about how this looks from his perspective. He's your husband, not content for your followers." The line went quiet for a moment, and then Mark added, "Give him time. And when he's ready to talk, make sure you really listen." I hung up, feeling even worse than before. I had been so focused on getting likes and laughs that I hadn't stopped to consider what it might cost. That night, I deleted the video. It felt like too little, too late, but it was a start. I posted an apology in its place, addressing Ryan directly. "To my husband, I'm so sorry for sharing something that hurt you. It was thoughtless, and I see that now. You mean more to me than anything else, and I'll do everything I can to make this right." I didn't expect a response from him, but I hoped he would at least see it. 2 days later, he came home. I heard the sound of his keys in the door and ran to meet him, my heart pounding. "Ryan," I said, tears welling up as he stepped inside. "I'm so sorry." "Let's sit," he said, cutting me off. His tone wasn't angry, but it wasn't warm either. We sat on the couch, the air between us heavy. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, and finally spoke. "I saw your post," he said quietly. "And I appreciate the apology. But, Maria, this isn't just about the video. It's about the way you've treated me, the way you put our private life out there for strangers to judge." His words stung, but I knew he was right. This wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a pattern. "I know," I said, my voice breaking. "I've been selfish, Ryan. I've been so caught up in sharing my life online that I forgot what really matters. I forgot about you." He nodded slowly, but his eyes were still guarded. "I need time to figure out if I can trust you again, because right now it feels like I'm just content for you, and that's not okay." His words left me speechless. I wanted to promise him that I would change, that I'd do better, but I knew this wasn't the time for promises. This was the time to prove it. After Ryan's return, things weren't the same. He was polite, but distant, speaking to me only when necessary. The warmth in his voice, the little smiles we used to share across the room, those were gone. I knew he was still processing, still deciding if he could trust me again. And I didn't blame him. Every day I replayed his words in my head. "It feels like I'm just content for you." The weight of that realization crushed me. I deleted all the posts that even remotely mentioned him, videos, photos, stories. As I scrolled through my feed, I felt a pang of guilt at how much of our private life I had shared. The funny anecdotes I'd thought were harmless now seemed invasive, even exploitative. One evening, I found him in the living room, sitting on the couch with his laptop. He looked up briefly as I entered but didn't say anything. "Ryan," I said softly, sitting down across from him. "Can we talk?" He closed his laptop and leaned back, crossing his arms. "What do you want to talk about?" "About us," I said, my voice trembling. "I know I've hurt you, and I need to know how I can fix this." Ryan let out a slow breath, his gaze steady but guarded. "You can start by explaining why you thought it was okay in the first place." I swallowed hard, feeling the shame rise in my chest. "I wasn't thinking," I admitted. "I got so caught up in trying to entertain people, in chasing likes and comments, that I didn't stop to consider how it would make you feel. I didn't think about how it would hurt you, and I'm so sorry for that." He shook his head, his jaw tightening. "You didn't think about me at all, Maria. That's the problem. You didn't ask if I was okay with it, and you didn't care enough to stop when the comments got out of hand. Do you know what it feels like to have thousands of strangers mocking you, judging you, because of something your wife posted?" Tears welled up in my eyes, but I forced myself to hold his gaze. "I can't imagine how awful that must have felt," I said. "And I hate that I made you feel that way. You're right, I didn't care enough in the moment. I was selfish, Ryan, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life." For a moment, he didn't respond. His silence felt heavier than anything he could have said. "I need to know that this isn't going to happen again," he said finally, his voice steady but firm. "I can't keep wondering if the next time I do something embarrassing, you're going to turn it into a joke for the whole world to see. I need to feel safe with you, Maria. Right now, I don't." His words cut deep, but I nodded. "I understand," I said. "And I'm not asking you to forgive me overnight. But I promise you, Ryan, I'm done with sharing our private life online. I've already deleted the posts, and I'm stepping back from social media entirely. Nothing is more important to me than you and our relationship." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his fingers laced together. "It's not just about deleting posts, Maria. It's about why you did it in the first place. If this is going to work, I need to believe that you're putting us, first." "I am," I said, my voice breaking. "I swear to you, Ryan, I'm done chasing attention. I'm done putting strangers ahead of you. I want to rebuild the trust I broke, no matter how long it takes." Ryan studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "But this is your last chance, Maria. If you ever make me feel like that again, I don't think I'll be able to stay." The weight of his words settled heavily on my shoulders, but I nodded. "I understand," I said, "and I won't waste this chance, Ryan. I promise." He didn't say anything more, but the fact that he was still here, still willing to try, was enough to give me hope. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, I felt ready to fight for our marriage the way I should have all along. For years, I'd leaned on my posts to validate me, to tell me I was likable, clever, and worth noticing. Letting that go felt like shedding a layer of myself, but it also felt like a step toward becoming the person Ryan deserved. I focused on being present in our home, in our marriage. I started paying attention to the small things that made Ryan happy, how he liked his coffee in the morning, the way he smiled when I remembered his favorite snacks, the quiet pride he took in his weekend DIY projects. These were the things I had once taken for granted, overshadowed by my need to entertain an audience. But even as I tried to bridge the gap between us, I could feel how wary Ryan still was. He didn't bring up the video again, but his silence spoke volumes. He was watching, waiting to see if my promises meant anything. One evening, I found him in the garage, working on a broken chair we'd been meaning to fix for months. I hesitated in the doorway, unsure if I was welcome. "Hey," I said softly. He glanced up briefly, then returned to his work. "Hey." "I was thinking," I began, stepping closer. "I'd like to help, if you don't mind." Ryan paused, his hands resting on the chair. For a moment, I thought he might turn me away, but then he nodded. "Sure," he said quietly. I spent the next hour sanding down the wood while he repaired the legs. We didn't talk much, but the shared silence felt meaningful, like we were starting to rebuild something. Not just the chair, but the foundation of our relationship. The real test came a week later. Ryan's colleagues were hosting a small gathering, and he asked if I wanted to come along. I could tell he was hesitant, unsure if I'd use the opportunity to be the center of attention. At the party, I stayed by his side, engaging in conversations, but avoiding the jokes and anecdotes I used to share so freely. When someone asked why I hadn't posted in a while, I simply smiled and said, "I've decided to take a break and focus on what's most important to me." Ryan's hand brushed mine under the table, a quiet acknowledgement of my words. Later that night, as we drove home, he finally spoke. "I noticed you didn't tell that story about the burnt casserole," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. I laughed softly. I figured it could stay between us. For the first time in weeks, Ryan smiled, a real smile, and I felt a flicker of hope. We still had a long way to go, but that night felt like a step forward. I had hurt Ryan in a way I never imagined I could, but he was giving me the chance to prove I could be better, and I was determined not to waste it. Over the next few weeks, Ryan and I slowly began to find our way back to each other. It wasn't seamless. There were moments of tension, times when he withdrew or I second-guessed myself. But each day brought small steps forward. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, I reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. It was a small gesture, but it felt monumental, like a crack in the wall that had been dividing us. "Ryan," I said quietly, turning to face him. "Thank you for giving me the chance to fix this." He looked at me for a long moment before speaking. "You're trying," he said. "And I see that. But, Maria, I need you to understand that this isn't just about what you do. It's about how it makes me feel. For a long time, I didn't think I mattered as much as your followers or the attention you got online. I don't ever want to feel that way again." His honesty broke my heart, but it also gave me clarity. "You matter more than anything," I said firmly, "and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you know that." That weekend, I decided to show Ryan how much I meant those words. He had always loved working with his hands, fixing things, building small projects. I suggested we spend Saturday transforming our spare room into a workshop for him, a space that was just his. As we worked side by side, I saw the tension in his shoulders start to ease. For the first time in weeks, he laughed, a genuine, unguarded laugh that reminded me of how things used to be. Later, as we stood in the finished room, Ryan looked around and then at me. "You didn't have to do this," he said, his voice soft. "I wanted to," I replied. "You've always supported me, even when I didn't deserve it. This is my way of showing you how much I appreciate you and how serious I am about putting you first." He pulled me into a hug, and for the first time since the video, I felt like we were truly connected again. That night, as we lay in bed, Ryan reached for my hand. "I believe you, Maria," he said quietly. "I think we can make this work, but we have to keep being honest with each other." "We will," I promised, holding his hand tightly. Our marriage wasn't perfect, it never had been, but we were learning to be better for each other. And as I drifted off to sleep, I felt a sense of peace, knowing that we were finally moving forward, together.